you give to each other like, holy shit! Like, he's doing it! And that was great. And the crowd was also really behind him, too.
Yeah, they were.
With the understanding of what he's walking into. So he did it with class. I also say that he truly has the front man presence around him. That's the word I was looking for. That you could tell this ain't his first rodeo being up on stage with a microphone.
But he also,
despite whatever nerves he would have, obviously based on the situation.
But he did a great job, I thought, of removing his own ego from it, realizing that it's not about me.
Right, absolutely.
And it was, and maybe that's just because it was the first show, or maybe that's just the way he's going to do the whole tour.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And cool dude. Hung out with a lot of the crowd after the fact. And in fact, and I guess we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
Then of course you have Iced Fucking Earth that comes out on the stage.
Hold on. I didn't get to say much about Sanctuary.
Oh, it's true. My bad. Sorry,
that's all right. So, now normally I'm not a drum guy. You know that. Mm-hmm. I want to say the drummer for Sanctuary is a badass.
Oh yeah.
I don't know his name. I apologize, whoever you are, Mr. Drummer, but you rule.
Yeah.
And the guitars were spot on. And I will say, as the second half of the show, when you could actually hear the vocals, when they were mixed in well, it was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I'm not a Sanctuary guy, never have been, but that made me realize really how good this guy is. So, anyway, that's all I've got on that. But
and it's funny you say that, and we did talk about this in between Sanctuary and Iced Earth coming on, so I'll repeat it now, which is, I do hope that despite the tragic passing of Warrell Dane, that Sanctuary continues to make music, and I do hope that they continue to make music and have Joseph be the guy to do it. And I hope that Joseph would have an interest in that. I assume he would. I would hope he would. Because Sanctuary, if you're listening, that's the dude to do it. And again, from the moment I heard him on Witherfall and heard that he was filling in for Warrell Dane or taking his place during the show, I went, that guy can absolutely do this. And he did. And so, bravo. I think that they did a great job. And again, if you're seeing, further shows past the opening night like we have, you're probably going to hear them in a much better, they're just going to sound better mix-wise.
Well, and as his comfort level goes up, he's only going to get better.
Oh, absolutely. So
yeah.
So we got Iced Earth, and, if you saw the set list that they played in Europe, it was very similar with the exception of two songs that they didn't play. So I'll just mention those now. One was Dracula, which is unfortunate because, A, there was no songs off a horse show, and B, that would have been really cool to hear live because I haven't heard that in a long time. They did play that in Europe. And they also didn't play The Hunter, which is an Iced Earth staple, which, I don't know if maybe they just cut it short due to encore-wise. That seems like that was part of the encore in Europe, but it wasn't part of the encore tonight.
Right.
But it is what it is. But they opened up with The Great Heathen Army, which is, their first track off of Incorruptible. Then, of course, went into Burning Times, Dystopia, so three songs that kick off albums they kicked off the show with, back to back to back, no stopping, no, hey, what's up, Indianapolis? Just went from one song to the next to the next. And just now, and here's the thing that we noticed, and we made this comment, backing up a little bit, like the one thing that we noticed is that, and none of the bands, with the exception of Iced Earth, did a true sound check, and when you could see that Iced Earth was doing a sound check, my immediate thoughts was, I guarantee the sound's better. Sure enough, it did.
Well, and that could be, maybe they weren't going to do a full sound check like that, but maybe they realized how shitty some of the sound was, and decided, we better go back out and do it again.
Yeah, and again, we're so close to the stage, our ears are almost touching the speaker, that's why I had moved around a little bit, going, okay, maybe it's just where I'm at.
And it wasn't.
It wasn't. No, I was in the middle of the stage. Well, not the stage, but center stage, right there, and it didn't matter. But a couple of standouts. I'm not going to go track by track. We'll actually post the set list for you. But some things I noticed about the show. First of all, it's Jon Schaffer, just from a riff standpoint. We haven't spent enough time on saying this. I mean, just the guy from a just writes some of the best galloping headbanger riffs of all time. And to hear him live, it just reminds you of how awesome the guy is. Speaking of awesome, Jake was incredible tonight as well.
Was, yeah.
And it's just funny to see that Biv has a 30-year strong Iced Earth t-shirt, and you have a lead guitarist who's 25
Right.
on stage playing with Iced Earth. And no knock on you, Jake. I hope you're listening, but dude, you were awesome. You did a great job this evening, and you were very loud in the mix, especially solo wise, which is good. It wasn't buried. It was very, you could hear it very well. One of the things I was interested in, this is my third time seeing Iced Earth. Biv, this is your first time.
This is my first time seeing Iced Earth.
So
Yeah.
I've seen them 3 times, once with Matt Barlow, and now this is the second time with Stu Block.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that a couple of things. I was interested in hearing some songs off of Incorruptible, because to me, and Biv and I did talk about this morning, or this afternoon, I should say. Dystopia, the first album with Stu, was phenomenal. Plagues of Babylon, their second album was
Yeah.
And then Incorruptible's really good as well. They played, obviously, a lot of songs off of Incorruptible. And what surprised me the most is some of the songs, I mean, you knew Seven-Headed Whore was going to be a killer. You knew The Great Heathen Army was going to be a killer because they're just they're just headbangers, right? But Ravenwing and Brothers specifically were 2 songs, and Jake had mentioned he's really looking forward to playing Brothers because it's a big solo part for him. He's center stage, and he gets to play, and everyone looks at Jake. But I was curious even when he said it, like, I wonder if that's going to sound live. They stood out to me as some of the stronger songs they did.
I agree.
Ravenwing was fantastic. So it was great to hear the new stuff that they did on Incorruptible and what it sounded like in a live setting. I think they did a great job. The one thing I'll say, and this is the comment and the compliment I made to Joseph, who's singing Warrell Dane songs and feeling it. Like, you could see the emotion in what he's singing. And maybe it's my ear, and maybe it's me, but it seems as if, and I want to make this comment also, I was a Stu Block fan when he was in Into Eternity, well before he was in Iced Earth. I thought he was phenomenal in Into Eternity and could sing every kind of style. So when I knew he was going to be Barlow's replacement in Iced Earth, I'm like, dude, Stu will nail this. And he does, and he did. But the one thing I noticed in a live setting is that Stu sings his Iced Earth stuff with just a lot more soul. I guess there's no better way to explain it than the older Matt Barlow stuff. Well, is it flat out the case?
Is it soul or is it comfort level?
Could be. Maybe he's just, we've talked about this before too, I think a lot of times Stu is guilty of doing a Matt Barlow impression,
right?
Then he is just singing like Stu Block, whereas maybe with his stuff, he's singing like Stu because, well, that's who he is, and maybe that's why it is.
You know, what's funny about that, I was thinking about that during the show, and I was thinking, if let's just pretend for a moment that Matt Barlow were to come back, right, and be the frontman again. Would you even really, I mean, to the untrained ear, would you even really notice a difference?
Yeah, I would.
You might, but you're a trained ear. You've been a longtime fan. You've been a fan of both.
I would think so. I think my only knock on Stu is the one thing I loved about Barlow in a live setting, especially on songs like I Died For You and Watching Over Me and Melancholy and songs like that. Again, these are all songs he was involved in the writing with, so I get it, but you felt him sing those songs on Alive in Athens and that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. You don't, and I saw him live in Milwaukee, you felt it. I don't feel that with Stu.
Fair enough.
But when Stu sings Ravenwing, I feel it. So it's not a knock on Stu, but I guess it is a knock on Stu, if that makes any sense.
How difficult would it be, though, to come into a band that we just talked about, that's 30 years old. And
sure.
And you're coming in with a library of material that you've got to rehearse and sing and get to know and all that, and then you get to do your own stuff. You know, of course, I think it's natural you're going to have a little bit more affinity towards your own material as opposed to
that's fair. That's fair. To me, I notice the difference more, and maybe I'm just being nitpicky as hell. But I will say, and they mentioned this because it's the 20th anniversary, which makes me feel really old.
Of Something Wicked. Yeah.
Of Something Wicked, This Way Comes. They played the Something Wicked trilogy.
Which is always awesome, by the way.
Oh, dude. Prophecy, Birth of the Wicked, and of course The Coming Curse. And speaking of, and we had alluded to this, and so they're about to play The Coming Curse, the last part of the Something Wicked trilogy, and Joseph Michael walks up to you, and he's like, hey, what's up, dude?
And hangs with us.
Yeah, he's just like, hey, cool. Thanks, man.
So he's got a beer in his hand. He's hanging with us for like 3 songs.
Yeah, so that was cool of him to stop by and say, hey, obviously it was louder than hell.
Yeah.
So it's not like we could chat it up or anything like that. But it was cool for him to do that. And then, John had mentioned he kind of took center stage for a little bit and actually sang Storm Rider because he had mentioned that was the 30th year. And for some strange reason, John Schaefer continues to live in our state, which is Indiana. So a lot of times they will start out tours in around this area, kind of, sort of, only because it's where they rehearse and it's where he lives anyway. So it makes sense to do that.
Can I talk about this for a minute?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so one of the things now, the deluxe room at the Murat holds, by reports that I've read, between 2,000 and 2,200 people.
Okay.
That said, I noticed over the last several days, while I'm seeing other cities are sold out, Indianapolis was continuing to run Facebook ads for tickets still available. And when I called today about handicap seating,
right,
they were offering 4 ticket packages for $90.
Wow,
which is amazing to me.
And cheaper than we got them.
Yeah, cheaper than we got them. Yeah,
no, just kidding.
Which I don't care, whatever. But anyway, so there had to be some level of disappointment.
Sure.
In John, especially for John, this is his home state,
right?
And so during in between songs, matter of fact, I think it was just before Storm Rider.
Well, he said it, and Stu said it a couple times too.
Yeah, but he came out and he said, "Hey, listen, guys, we haven't played Indianapolis in a long time. So we need you to, rattle the cage. We need you to beat up your promoter a little bit. We need you to tell your friends to come out and support us because that's how we come back."
Right.
And Stu said it as well. But you kind of got the feeling, or at least I got the feeling, that, and rightfully so, he was disappointed in the metal scene here in his home, basically his hometown. He's from Franklin. We're in Indy. Franklin's a suburb. But he was very disappointed in the metal scene here. And I can see why. I mean, a big act like Iced Earth comes through and you can't sell out 2,000 seats. By our estimation, we're thinking on a low end, 1,200.
Yeah.
On a high end, 1,500 people.
Yeah.
And, it's just really a shame. So I want to talk about that for a minute. The metal scene in the United States, as we've talked about before, is horrible.
Yeah.
But it's particularly bad here in Indy, and which is a shame because this is like the 25th largest market in the country. But yet, for some reason, we just can't get the shows here. And then when we do get them here, because
half the people show up.
Yeah, it's half full.
Right.
So shame on Indy, shame on the American metal scene. So go out and support not only Iced Earth, but any local metal band that you really dig.
No, that's a good point, because I will say that it is interesting to see. Now, here's the cool thing. Despite it being 12 to 1,500 strong, the crowd was into it.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny, because I've been to shows where there's 5,000 people, but
no energy.
500 of them actually give a shit.
Yeah.
And then I've been to shows, actually even smaller than this one, in which they were small but mighty. And every single person who was there was into the show. And that's the vibe I got tonight, too.
Yes.
That while it wasn't a sellout, unfortunately, and while it wasn't, near capacity, really, people were digging the shit out of the show and really into it and really, singing along and rocking out. And it was a great time, man. My ears are ringing. I will be paying for it tomorrow. But they played for about 2 hours or so.
Yeah.
Did an encore, did a 2-song encore. Clear the Way, by the way, which is a song they played, which is what closes out Incorruptible, but it was the first song they did in the encore. Dude, great to hear live also. So a lot of stuff off of Incorruptible. If you're a fan of their new album,